Few stories in Hollywood history carry the kind of dramatic irony that surrounds Dirty Dancing. Here was a film that nobody believed in, built on a shoestring budget, held together by injured bodies and frozen limbs, nearly dismantled by studio executives at every turn, and yet it became one of the most beloved movies ever made. The secrets hiding behind those iconic dance sequences and unforgettable lines reveal a production far more fascinating than anything audiences saw on screen. This is the real story of how a near disaster became a cultural phenomenon that generations of fans still celebrate decades later. The physical toll of making this film started with its leading man before a single frame was ever shot. Patrick Swayze carried a damaged knee into this production, a chronic injury that dated all the way back to a teenage football accident in high school. The kind of injury that never fully heals, that flares without warning, that reminds you it exists precisely when you can least afford the distraction. For a film built almost entirely around demanding dance choreography, lifting sequences, and physically intense movement, that knee represented a ticking clock on every single shoot day. Swayze would complete a sequence, and the swelling would appear. Filming would halt, ice would come out, the crew would wait, and then he would get back up and do it again. What makes his performance genuinely remarkable is that audiences watching those scenes never once suspected they were watching a man managing serious pain through sheer determination. Every lift, every spin, every passionate movement on screen was powered by more than physical ease. While Swayze was managing his body, the studio was busy trying to manage the film's identity, starting with its title. Executives were convinced that the word dirty was commercial poison. They circulated alternatives with genuine seriousness, suggesting names like I Was a Teenage Mambo Queen with Straight Faces, apparently believing that wholesome vagueness would serve audiences better than honest provocation. The pressure on the creative team to abandon the title was intense and sustained, with internal memos and meetings dedicated to convincing filmmakers that they were walking toward box office failure. What those executives never grasped was that the title's edge was precisely its power. It promised something real, something that existed outside the sanitized entertainment landscape of the era. The filmmakers held their ground, understanding that giving the film a safer name would have stripped away the very quality that made it worth watching. That quiet act of resistance against corporate nervousness turned out to be one of the shrewdest decisions in the entire production. There is something almost poetic about the fact that one of the film's most quoted and beloved lines was never written by anyone. When Jennifer Grey's baby first encounters Johnny at the staff quarters, the script called for something entirely different. But nerves, improvisation, and the strange alchemy of genuine human awkwardness took over, and Grey blurted out that she had carried a watermelon. The line made no logical sense, which was exactly why it made perfect emotional sense. Anyone who has ever fumbled their words in front of someone they found overwhelmingly attractive understood baby completely in that moment. Director Emile Ardolino saw it immediately, recognized the authentic discomfort on Grey's face, and made a decision to keep it. A genuine mistake became one of cinema's most enduring expressions of romantic bewilderment, quoted by fans for decades as shorthand for particular absurdity of attraction. The romantic tension between Swayze and Grey extended beyond the characters they were playing, because the two actors had genuinely clashing approaches to their craft. Swayze brought intense preparation and methodical seriousness to his work, while Grey favored spontaneity and trusted her instincts in the moment. These weren't minor aesthetic differences. They were fundamental disagreements about how to build performance, and they created real friction between the two leads throughout the shoot. There were moments of genuine frustration on both sides, a push and pull that neither could fully resolve. And yet that friction did something that good chemistry alone might never have achieved. It gave their scenes a live wire quality, an authentic tension that cameras captured without either of them consciously manufacturing it. The romantic electricity between Johnny and Baby was partly real, partly accidental, and entirely the product of two people who genuinely challenged each other. If the off-camera relationship between the leads had its difficulties, the physical conditions of the actual filming added another layer of ordeal entirely. The log balancing scene, which looks playful and tender on screen, was filmed on a genuinely slippery beam suspended over cold water, and neither actor had anything resembling easy footing. Falls happened repeatedly. Bruises accumulated. The combination of wet surfaces, choreographed movement, and the constant awareness of the water below made every take a small act of courage. What the camera captured as romantic vulnerability was also just vulnerability of a very real kind. Two people genuinely struggling to maintain their footing while trying to make everything look effortless. That authentic difficulty transferred into the scene's emotional texture in ways that pure technical skill never could have replicated. The lake lift sequence carried the entire film's emotional weight on its shoulders, and the conditions under which it was filmed were genuinely brutal. Late October water temperatures had dropped to levels that were not merely uncomfortable, but physically numbing. The kind of cold that makes your muscles stop cooperating properly and turns coordination into a conscious battle against your own body. Between takes, Swayze and Gray would rush to warm up, wrapped in whatever was available, before plunging back into the water to attempt perfection again. Every second they spent submerged was a second of genuine endurance. The beauty that audiences see in that sequence, the triumphant lift, the emotional release, the sense of two people finally becoming who they were meant to be, was born in physical suffering that the camera mercifully hid. That gap between what audiences feel and what the actors actually experienced is one of the great secrets of the entire film. The world the film inhabits so convincingly wasn't invented. Screenwriter Eleanor Bergstein didn't construct Kellerman's resort from imagination. She remembered it. Her childhood summers in the Catskills resorts of the early 1960s gave her everything. The social hierarchies, the forbidden boundaries between guests and staff, the particular electricity of summer nights when class rules bent slightly under the pressure of music and heat. She had watched those staff dancers. She understood what it meant to be drawn toward a world you weren't supposed to enter. Every detail that makes a film feel lived in is lived in, because it was drawn from specific memories of specific summers that Bergstein carried for decades before finally putting them on paper. That foundation in genuine experience explains why the film resonates across generations who never set foot in a Catskills resort. Authentic memory translates into universal emotion. Baby's now iconic laugh during one scene owed nothing to the script and everything to Patrick Swayze's decision to deliberately annoy his co-star. He repeated a particular movement specifically designed to get under Gray's skin, and it worked. What the camera captured was not performance, but a genuine reaction, real frustration mixing with real amusement in Gray's face in a way that no amount of direction could have manufactured. The director saw it and knew immediately that it was better than anything they had planned. That real moment revealed the playful dimension of Johnny and Baby's relationship more honestly than scripted banter possibly could. Because audiences instinctively recognize the difference between performed lightness and actual joy. The production's financial reality shaped nearly every creative decision in ways that turned out to be blessings in disguise. The budget was so constrained that the crew was improvising solutions to basic problems throughout the shoot, borrowing equipment, hunting thrift stores for props, choosing locations based on cost as much as anything else. Sets were dressed with whatever could be found cheaply. The wardrobe department spent weeks in vintage shops finding actual period clothing rather than having anything made, which meant the characters ended up wearing genuinely worn, genuinely old garments that carried real history in their fabric. Baby's modest dresses and Johnny's casual work clothes looked like real people's clothes because they essentially were. That accidental authenticity gave the film a lived-in texture that expensive productions often spend enormous resources trying to fake and usually fail to achieve. The bright lights required for filming created an unexpected technical problem around the physical appearance of the dancers. Under that kind of illumination, the actors would look dry and composed in sequences that were supposed to feel warm, humid, and physically demanding. The makeup team solved this problem with one of cinema's more elegant pieces of improvisation, discovering that regular sunscreen applied to skin created a perfect sheen under hot lights that was completely indistinguishable from genuine perspiration. The actors were coated before dance sequences, and suddenly the resort felt like it had actual summer weather. Small technical decisions executed consistently across dozens of scenes built an atmosphere of physical reality that contributed enormously to the film's immersive quality. Among the many battles fought to keep the film's integrity intact, none was more significant than the fight to preserve the subplot involving Penny's medical crisis. Studio executives found it deeply uncomfortable and pushed hard and repeatedly for it to be removed entirely from the script. Their argument was commercial. that the storyline would limit the audience and invite controversy that could sink the film's prospects. The filmmaker's argument was artistic and moral, that this subplot was precisely what gave Baby's transformation its weight and meaning. Her willingness to help someone in genuine desperate need, to risk her own comfort and safety for another person's survival, was the action that revealed who she actually was. Without that, her rebellion was just romance. With it, her rebellion was character. The decision to fight for that storyline was a decision that made the film about something real. Jennifer Grey's path to the role of Baby was far from the smooth inevitability it might seem in retrospect. She wasn't among the early frontrunners for the part, and the production had spent months searching for someone who could carry the particular combination of innocence and inner courage the role demanded without finding the right fit. The casting came together alarmingly close to the start of filming, with Grey's chemistry test with Swayze finally revealing the dynamic the film needed. The electric quality of their connection in that test room was exactly the foundation the story required. Her preparation time was minimal given how late the decision came, but she brought a vulnerability and authenticity to Baby that transformed what could have been a charming romance into something more genuinely moving. The institutional pessimism surrounding the film before its release was remarkable in its completeness. Executives had already decided internally that Dirty Dancing would skip theatrical release entirely and go straight to home video, which in that era was understood as a quiet commercial burial. The leads were relatively unknown. The budget was limited. The story was unconventional. Every data point the suits were accustomed to relying on pointed toward obscurity. What those predictions couldn't account for was the audience's hunger for exactly what the film was offering. Something honest, something emotionally real, something that didn't feel manufactured for the marketplace. The film's eventual status as a genuine cultural phenomenon remains one of Hollywood's most dramatic examples of institutional taste failing to predict human connection. Even within the production itself, the climactic dance sequence generated significant debate before a single audience ever saw it. Several crew members argued that the choreography's energy felt too contemporary for a story set in 1963, that its modern sensibility would pull viewers out of the carefully constructed period atmosphere the rest of the film had built. The concern was legitimate on its surface. The moves, the staging, and the emotional register that final sequence did push beyond what typical early 1960s resort entertainment would have looked like. But what the skeptics couldn't anticipate was how irrelevant historical accuracy would become in the face of pure emotional catharsis. The finale worked not because it felt like 1963, but because it felt like triumph, and triumph is timeless. Patrick Swayze's contributions to the film extended into territory most audiences never fully appreciated. A song he had written years earlier for an unrelated project, a romantic ballad that had never found its proper home, turned out to fit the film's emotional landscape perfectly. She's Like the Wind captured the vulnerable interior of Johnny's character in ways that dialogue and dance alone couldn't reach, revealing the depth of feeling beneath the tough exterior the character wore publicly. Swayze's own vocal performance brought genuine emotion to the recording. The song became a genuine chart hit, strengthening the film's cultural footprint and demonstrating the full range of his artistic abilities. His vision shaped the film in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Creating the illusion of Kellerman's Resort as a single coherent location required combining two completely separate filming sites more than 100 miles apart. The interior scenes were captured at Mountain Lake Hotel in Virginia, while the lakeside sequences were filmed at Lake Lure in North Carolina. Maintaining visual consistency between two distinct architectural environments, two different lighting conditions, and two genuinely different landscapes demanded meticulous attention from the entire production team. Clever cinematography and careful editing sealed the scenes perfectly, and audiences accepted Kellerman's as a real, unified place without ever questioning it. The resort's success as a location was itself a kind of illusion built from scattered pieces. The authenticity of the dance environment came from a casting decision that most productions would never make. Rather than filling the background with ordinary extras and hoping nobody looked too closely, the team specifically recruited genuine professional dancers to populate Kellerman's Resort. Real dancers move differently. They hold their bodies with a confidence that comes from thousands of hours of practice. They know how to exist in a dance environment without performing their existence in it. Their presence transformed the resort's group scenes from stage background action into a living, breathing world with its own internal logic and energy. Audiences sensed the difference even without being able to identify it precisely, responding to real skill the way humans always respond to authenticity. Cynthia Rhodes brought such exceptional technical ability to the role of Penny that the production team faced the unusual problem of having nothing to hide. Where most dance sequences require careful camera work to protect an actor's limitations, Rhodes had no limitations worth protecting. Her professional training meant she executed every movement with flawless precision, and the camera could simply capture her honestly without accommodation or trick. That technical mastery elevated Penny from a supporting role into an emotional cornerstone of the film, with Rhodes bringing such raw intensity to the character's most difficult moments that her suffering felt devastatingly real. The unplanned table slide that Swayze executed during filming produced one of the most genuinely spontaneous moments in the entire picture. Nobody had discussed it. Nobody had rehearsed it. He simply decided in the moment to slide across the floor toward Gray, and the cameras caught her real astonishment and delight before she had any chance to prepare a performance. That kind of authenticity cannot be manufactured or directed. It can only be captured when an actor trusts their instincts completely and their scene partner responds with genuine human surprise. The moment embodied everything the film was reaching for: bold, playful, irresistibly alive. Patrick Swayze's initial reaction to the line that would ultimately define his character's legacy was pure skepticism. He found the phrasing of "nobody puts baby in a corner" awkward and unnatural, convinced that audiences would find it strange rather than powerful, and he lobbied for it to be changed or removed. The filmmakers held firm, and when Swayze committed to delivering it with the full weight of Johnny's protective intensity, he transformed his own skepticism into something timeless. The line entered popular culture immediately and has stayed there ever since, quoted whenever someone wants to invoke the idea of standing up for someone who deserves better. The irony that the actor who almost cut the line became the reason it worked so completely is one of the production's most perfect secrets. Dirty Dancing emerged from conditions that should have broken it: frozen water, chronic injury, studio resistance, creative disagreements, budget constraints, institutional doubt, and last-minute decisions all conspired against a film that was never supposed to matter. What those obstacles actually created, without anyone fully realizing at the time, was something genuine. The cold was real, the pain was real, the friction was real, and audiences, who always know the difference even when they can't articulate it, responded to that reality with a devotion that has never faded. Sometimes the most enduring things are built not from ideal conditions, but from stubborn creativity that refuses to be defeated by them.